Okay, let's get this happening. I think I'm right to go. Looks like I'm live. So wherever you are around the world, welcome to my session. Um, very proud to be part of this Microsoft 365 marathon. Amazing event and a whole bunch of fun. Hopefully you can all see my slides okay, but I'll just kick off and crack on. So obviously, being a virtual marathon, we're hoping that things get back to normal sooner than later. And for the calendars, make sure you put this in for a real conference starting next year. I've been doing a bunch of these virtual marathons here in Australia and New Zealand based, and while they're technically fun, we're all looking forward to actually meeting people and collaborating and so these events rely heavily on sponsors. Just make sure that you take some time to go and check these guys out. We're very grateful for them providing the support that they do, and also to acknowledge the people who have and all the people who put the hard work in to set this event up and to monitor it and sponsor it, to the producers and to all those behind the scenes people. Lots of effort go into these events. So who am I? My name is Errol LeBoydre. I'm from Brisbane, Australia. I'm a principal director of a company called Wildlinks. Wildlinks is a 10-year-old company specifically set up to deal with information management, but with a strong focus on records and document governance and process improvement, etc. I'm a father, got a bunch of kids who are now adults, which is really cool, and I'm also a grandfather, which is a very proud tag I wear. Got two amazing grandsons. I've been doing integration solution work for about 30 years, and interesting that I dug out one of my old Microsoft MCD solution developer tags. It had a date of it 1999, I think, so I've been doing this a while. So where is Brisbane? For those that don't know, given that this is a global event, we're on the east coast of Australia, and we're known as a river city. We're probably the third biggest city in Australia, but we think we're the laid-back city. For those who are interested, there's a link there. Jump across with a chance to win the great prize. You can see the bit linked on the bottom. Jump across there. There's visit all the sponsor stuff. There's some question and answers. Jump on that. 5 correct answers, and then there's a prize each for the different regions. Also have a quick look at this. It's very important that charity work continues to happen, and I guess we're all thankful for the frontline workers and the last few months. Oh, not just the last few months, but all the time. But the amount of work that's had to happen and the efforts that's gone into some of the situations we've had to deal with globally. It's hard to imagine from Christmas till now where we've come and what it means to us. Okay, so let's get into this. My event, or this session, is about streaming analytics, and we're going to talk about what is streaming analytics as being part of the Azure services stack. We're going to talk about what we can use it for. I'm actually going to build a streaming analytics job from start to finish. So I haven't recorded that. We're going to do it live. I'm fairly confident, but we'll see. And then we'll talk about how we've applied this technology, streaming analytics, into a real-world scenario to change how we position an enterprise application with other products and processes. And then we can take some questions and answers towards the end. So streaming analytics is just one of those objects or one of those services that sits in the Microsoft Azure stack, and this is one of my favorite slides to describe where it sits. It's down here under the analytics pathway, I guess. But what's interesting for me is the amount of building blocks that we have in this stack to use now when we're looking to provide or develop solutions to solve problems. It's for me, it's a bit like Lego. What do we need to solve a problem? What are we going to build for our clients? And streaming analytics is just one of those aspects, but it has an important role. So like I said, it sits here. We're also going to use event hubs, and we're going to use Power BI. So streaming analytics at a high level is just a way that we can actually analyze and stream data at scale. Large amounts of data, we can actually look at that data stream, and we can make some decisions on it and route it as to where we need. So there are three parts to streaming analytics. There's the analytics itself, but then we've got an input or ingest, and then we've got an output. So if you think of it just like that, we input stuff into streaming analytics, we provide a range of processing, and we do a bunch of stuff to it, and that then decides what happens at the end. And there's a number of things we can do with that. The inputting of that is fairly simple, really. So we've got three options there. We can use hubs, blob storage, or IoT hub. We're going to create a new event hub, and we're going to simulate data going into that hub. But I think streaming analytics, given its scale capability, was probably designed more for in the IoT type scenario. When you've got large volumes of devices, all generating events, all generating data, and then so what do you do with it? How do you handle that? Where do you put that? How do you manage it? Streaming analytics does that very well, and it can handle millions of events a second. It's very capable of doing that. So the job that we're going to create today is simply this, and it's not by hubs. We're going to create an event hub. We're going to bring that data into analytics, and then we're going to then create a query to send that data into live Power BI. And it's a very powerful example because to watch data being created, to watch it being ingested, to watch it being managed, and then putting directly to Power BI. We can do that in this time frame. Then I think that's pretty cool. Power BI is only one of the options we can use for outputting. We can do a bunch of other things. A lot of the work we do is for streaming analytics into functions. So function apps are a serverless option out of the Azure stack as well. So when you start thinking about how we can create a serverless function to perform some logic based upon our queries or our rule sets in streaming analytics, that just adds to the power. The job that I'm going to create is straight from the Microsoft Docs streaming analytics site. So go jump on that link if you want to have a play. Do the same thing that I've done here. And like I said, if you're looking to have a play with streaming analytics, this is a real fast way to get a result. There's nothing like studying an example or a job and actually getting to a result where it works, and then you can take that as a base. So I haven't done anything crazy. I've just used that same example. Okay, so like I said, streaming analytics, we're going to need an input. We're going to need a way to ingest it with event hubs, and then we're going to massage that. Our input comes from a simple application which comes from that site, and we're going to actually simulate phone calls. So this is a little telco generator, and once again, this is on that Microsoft link. The telco generator is going to simulate getting phone calls from locations around the world, which includes the location, phone number, etc. This is just going to generate lots of events for us to use. Part of this little application is it's got a simulator for fraudulent phone calls. So what that means is, for example, if someone calls me from New Zealand, Wellington, and then 2 seconds later they call me with the same number from somewhere in Africa or America, obviously that's not right. It's going to be fraudulent. So we're going to write a query that says, hang on a second, this data on this scenario isn't right based upon this little event generator. Right, so to use this generator, we're going to need to create an event hub because that generator is going to push data into the event hub. So let's get portal open, and we'll start that. Okay, so I've opened up a portal.jira under a development account that I've got to use. Let's go back to home and we'll start this from scratch. So the first thing, like I said, we're going to create an event hub. An event hub is just a way to collect data. It doesn't do a lot really, but it's just a fast way of staging and manipulating data, and it handles that very well. So in this particular tenant that I'm using, I've got no event hubs right now. Let's add one. Let's create a new resource group, GM365 VM, because that's where we're at. Namespace will do the same, so we'll go event hub M365 VM, location Australia East, pricing tier standard. There are two pricing tiers, but we can scale this up to suit based upon units. View create. So this is going to give us a namespace that we can use, and our little event creation application will actually then send it directly into the event hubs. The schema of the data is based upon what the event creator is doing. Validation, and I'll show you that when we get there. Okay, so that's just creating. Let's get our application ready. That's the application config file is just going to need that event hub data, so it knows where to send its automatically generated events to. Spinning, spinning, spinning. Okay. Event hubs. So now we have an event hub. That's great. Obviously, nothing's happening to that because I've just created. Nothing's going in there. So let's actually create. Let's get an access policy. Manage. I'm selecting manage in terms of access policy because we're sending data in. The policy config needs to be able to write to the event hub. We could create many different policies against this event hub to only read it or to listen, etc. Create. Give myself some space. Loading config. Okay, so now this is going to create for us a primary key. So let's copy that primary key and put it into our application config. Okay, config string name, let's put it into there, V, and we need the name of this particular event hub, which is EHM365 VM. One trick when you're doing, if you're going to follow this this job under the Microsoft site, that's not a connection string. Connection string, let's copy the right one, clipboard. is just make sure when you copy that connection string across, sometimes it copies across with some extra. No, that's fine. Let's save that. Okay, so we've now created an event hub, in which case we should be able to then spin up our little application and start pushing events into that. The application, or the event project that does that, it requires, copy that. Let's see what happens. So this event generator, it says we're going to generate 1,000 simulated phone calls per minute, and we've got this like a 0.2% forward rate. Let's see what happens. Okay, so that's now happening. So I've spun up this little console app, and it's now generating events and data to go into our event hub. And this is no different to, whoops. Let's go back. Let's make sure I saved off that event hub name, saved off this connection string, okay. Shared access key. Let's go back to it looks like we've got some data going from there, but I'm getting an error on send. Okay, let's close that down and we'll just jump on this and do that again. Event hub. Event hub namespace. Save. Let's close that down. It's not going well, this presentation. That's okay. See how far we can get with it. Okay, back to slides. I'm going to talk through this. Made a mess of that. So when we write our queries to look at our ingesting and our then querying to go to our outputs, there's a number of things we can do to manage that data. The query we're going to write, and I can show you that. I should have created that event hub in advance. So this is the query we're going to use for the to manage that data from that simulated application. You're going to see we're actually going to use the tumbling window, which creates a duration, and tumbling window then allows us to then create it's like a space or a time bracket that then rolls on from one to the next and does an aggregation of our query count in that tumbling window. Just bear with me. I'm going to make this work. This is really annoying me. Streaming jobs. I think I've got that connection string. I actually think that my connection is just starting to be dodgy. Okay, abandon that. What a shame. So let's go and talk about how we've used that. We understand that streaming analytics takes events and data at a scale, ingests that. Streaming analytics has a natural connection to event hubs, which means we don't need to actually write connectors between Event Hub and Streaming Analytics. Once we create that analytics job, we can say, please watch this Event Hub, and as data goes into that, let's just take it, let's just put a query against that, or let's put many queries against that, and then decide on what happens to that output. So one of the things that we do is we manage information through a product called Micro Focus Content Manager. And it focuses very heavily on retention, disposal, managing information. But that product sits nicely in the Microsoft 365 and Azure space. But it doesn't have a natural way of actually then connecting, joining, or it's not a good building block naturally into that space. So how do we take the services and the positiveness out of that application and then extend that into the Microsoft space? The application that I tried to run up that was failing, to simulate phone events, is no different to any other event generating type process. So in our case, this real world scenario, we have events that are generated from this content manager application. So every single thing that happens generates an event, and an event can be a record, or it can be location based or workflow based. There's tons of them, but we can get down and narrow down to the process that we need to then, I guess, intercept and then extend. Okay, so this is a quick example of that event stream, which no different to that failed telco one, just pushes events into the event hub. So then streaming analytics then recognizes we've got events coming into that and processes them. So let's have some examples of this, and this is where we're trying to get to with that little demo. So one of the things we do with content managers, we set people to be assigned to a record, and we can then move it around. It's like a low-level workflow, I guess, where we can just change who is assigned to a record to perform some sort of role or functionality. Now, within the application, it's fairly static. It works, but how do we then take that to something like Teams, for example, where the growth in Teams is phenomenal. Everyone's using Teams. It's great. So this example is we take that event that comes out, go into streaming analytics, and this is an example here of the rule sets that we can apply. And in this case, I have a query that says if it's an assignee change on that application, then go to a new output. And for this case here, the output is to generate a message in Teams. Okay, so that becomes, well, it sounds fairly simple, but before this building block technology in Azure services, it would be a fairly complex process. So that's just one example. And how do we do that? Well, we take the event, we decide which events coming into streaming analytics relate to this. We then group those, and then we send them off to a function. The function then builds out an adaptive card using the adaptive card technology, and then it puts it to a connector in Teams. So adaptive card technology is phenomenal. We have a number of different templates and cards based upon an event type. So we can decide what's happening as a process through the events, and then we can adapt that into something which is much easier to use. It's much more user intuitive. Along the same lines as the adaptive card is we can then exploit the actionable emails process. So we can do the same sort of thing. If we have an approval process or a workflow where we need someone to approve something, we can take, once again, we can look at those events, make a decision on what it is, and then send that off to an actionable message, which then can be sent through email, which again is a different technology and allows us to then to interact and to perform actions directly from an email. As you can imagine, a user who just has a simple process to do within a big complex application, if all they need to do is approve something and they get an email which is automated through the events, and they can do that through the email, then happy days. We're not asking them to come back into an application and then open it up, navigate, get to it. As simple as a user's life can be, that's what we're trying to achieve. We can then take the events that we need, and then we can cut those up and query them, and we can port those directly to Power BI. And that little job that the gods didn't allow me to do would have done that as well. So this is showing a static representation of Power BI. But using a tumbling window or a different sort of aggregated time-based query, then Power BI would actually allow to show those results live, which is pretty cool. So we can also take events, and then we can come back and work out, okay, hang on a second, what do they relate to? So we also manage training portals and a bunch of interface scenarios that our clients use for change management and training, for example. So that process of actually having a training piece of material go into that portal, we have a workflow that's internal. So it starts off with a job to create that, and then it becomes a draft piece of material asset. Someone else might work on that to then to template that up, and then there's an approval process to make sure it works, etc. And eventually you get to a point where it's been completed and approved. So by then interrogating the events that come out of Content Manager, we can then say, well, these conditions are met. We understand that. Now run a workflow to expose those documents into a format directly into something like a training portal scenario. So which means, all of the effort goes into developing a training material piece, but then the actual workflow and then the actual generation of converting, working it, etc., to the end result is all automated based upon the fact that we can interrogate an event and then make a decision based upon conditions. And this is sort of it's more complex than this, of course. So we have material which is video based or which is static document based. So when we get the interrogation of the events in streaming analytics, we actually have a look and see what it is, and we can take multiple workflow paths based upon what we need that to do. We also have our website blog page. The blog articles that sit on that are generated directly from Content Manager through a workflow process and through an interrogation of events coming into streaming analytics. We can also take the events, and I guess it's when you're looking at the events of an application, and it's not just Content Manager, but anything that you're working with. If you have access to those events and you can interrogate them, then you can extend it to pretty much whatever you need to do. So it's a common scenario for us where people want to use Teams, and that's a perfect scenario. But those teams and channels and all the asset that goes into Teams, it actually sits underneath that in Content Manager, where the users have been working with and be comfortable with in the first place. So that is a first part of a synchronized step of going from Content Manager to Teams through streaming analytics. And of course, then we'd create a team to go back into Content Manager, which is different technology again. So all the user has to do is to create something in Content Manager. We create the rule set for that. The streaming analytics picks up the conditions and rule sets, and then can generate and do what it likes. Another scenario for that. We're at this slide. Another scenario which I'll talk through is we then take the streaming analytics into an event sync, and then we do signal our services, which is pretty cool. So we can do signal our services, so events can be then punched up and displayed on a live portal, which is just another technology. And it all comes back to using those building blocks in the Azure stack to decide how you're going to solve those problems. Our ability to solve problems and to put these things together based upon needs is so cool these days compared to how hard it used to be 30 odd years ago. I think the challenge now becomes making sure we understand the requirements of our clients, or making sure exactly what needs we need to fix, rather than actually struggling with the technology. Although looking at the streaming analytics job that I tried to create, that would seem like a technology fail. I suspect that I've just moved in there to a spot to do this where I've got a really poor bandwidth. Never mind, that's my fail. So look, I'm a little bit early, but we might wrap this up. We've got a couple of QR codes there for speaker feedback and event feedback. Thanks for being patient, sticking with me. Fortunately, I didn't get the result I wanted with building an app. And then, of course, as it starts to stumble a bit, you know, I was tricked up on screens and got a bit ahead of myself. But there we go. I think you understand a bit more about streaming analytics if you hadn't, if you don't already know that. And look, go and have some fun and see where you can actually use it in your solutions. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye. So if you're still on and you have any questions, just let me go and see if we have any questions. No, it looks good. If you got my Twitter handle, LinkedIn, if you have any questions, just go and jump on those and hit me up. Right, enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.